This episode of the only podcast about movies was recorded, well, exactly how we usually record it, but it was recorded before the Oscars. That's right. So if you hear us make any predictions or things we think might happen, which also might be known as predictions, please don't spoil it for the recorded us, because at this time, we don't know any better. And with that in mind, enjoy the show. Internet, I'm America's best figure skater. I don't want friggin' Eskimo pies. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And yes, my parents dubbed over my favorite episode of Star Trek with CNN coverage, but I'm keeping it together. My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film I, Tonya.
A little late.
We are late to the game. I am sorry. The Olympics is going on. Maybe I could say we were waiting for that.
Oh, that's a good, because I haven't watched any of the Olympics at this point.
That's an excuse.
But also this was your number 3 film of the year.
I know, I fucked up the thing.
And we no, because this was actually my fault, because I said we would there were a couple movie reviews that we were gonna do, and we could include them in our list even if we hadn't reviewed them at this point, and this was one of them.
Yes. So
So spoiler for your review.
It's awful. Don't see.
Yeah, you hated this movie.
No, this movie was so good. But yeah, I'm psyched to finally get a chance to talk about it, because it kind of blew me away more than I expected it to, and it tied together a lot of things in cinema that I really do enjoy. Like it sounds trivial, but like the nice balance of drama, comedy, and then thinking about why you're laughing about something is always appreciated on me, and I don't know, I dug the crap out of it.
Well, this is also a nice tie-in as well, because we are, if you're listening in for the first time, you can email us your thoughts, comments, movie requests at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com, or hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod. And one of the reasons we are doing this movie is because of an email we got from Steve on via our email, who said, and this goes back a while. We're a little late on this review.
We talked about this. I think we talked about this email before, but let's bring it up again.
Yeah, so we're definitely back in there now. I was listening to your review of The Disaster Artist, and my ears perked up. Matt, when you mentioned you were eager to see I, Tonya, I worked on the film as the first assistant editor this spring and summer. It's a spectacular movie, and we had a lot of fun making it. It's in limited release. I hope you both get a chance to see it, and can't wait to hear your reviews. So, Steve, listen.
We're doing it.
Listen, Steve.
We're doing it.
We get it. You worked on a movie. It was good. You want us to say you did a good job. We know what you're doing here. But nobody likes a kiss ass.
Whoa.
But Steve, yes,
this
movie
right.
is so well. I feel like this is one of those things. It would have been awful if you. It would have been unusual if you'd sent us a movie that you said you worked on. Now, typically in films, the assistant editor will work on the assembly cuts, might do rough cuts, they kind of bring all the footage in, they name it, they organize it. They are the
gatekeeper to the footage to the editor.
But on some of the feature films I've seen or worked on or had people work on as well, the assistant editor will actually cut sequences together.
Oh, yes.
Alongside the editor. So we don't know what you did on this film, but I will say this, and again, I know what you're doing here, Steve.
Jesus, what's happening?
But really, this movie should have been nominated for Best Editing.
Yes.
It really should have been.
Yes.
Yes. And I'm not just saying that because you emailed us in, but like when I watched this movie, I like, even if I didn't know that you'd emailed us in, this movie should have 100%. The editor was Tatiana Regal, and she absolutely should have been nominated for Best Editing.
A snub, in my opinion.
A complete snub.
And just real quick before we move on, thank you, Steve, for writing us that email. But also, I'd like to shout out AEs in general. AEs are the people, the assistant editors are the people that make it so that when I'm doing most of my post work, like a good AE and a bad AE is a difference between a production failing or going over budget or just sailing smoothly. So when Steve, I appreciate your vocation and everything that all AEs do, because without them, none of the things that we're talking about and judging tertiarily from an outside perspective would ever even exist.
And most AEs often go on to become editors in their own right as well. So yes. I'm sure we'll be hearing more of Steve and seeing what you're working on in the future. future.
Yes, but on the topic of I, Tonya, you also had another, just on the topic of what the film is about. Obviously.
Yes, so
had an email.
I have a friend who happens to be.
Liar.
I have a friend. Yes, no, guys, listen. I know what you're doing. I know what it sounds like I'm doing, but I have friends.
Yeah.
But I happen to have a friend who was the number 2 novice skater around the same time as Tonya Harding was going for her first Olympic qualification.
Okay.
I believe that's the correct terminology.
Double check your friend. Was this really you?
It was really me.
Was it really you? Because it's like you had a friend. Oh, my friend did this thing.
This was 1992, the national championships.
Okay.
And this friend of mine was in the younger novice age bracket and placed second.
Let's call them Bahir.
Bahir, yes. Bahir.
I was trying to think of a rhyming word.
Have you ever seen me with ice skates on? It is not a pretty sight. Or leotards for that example, for that matter.
Yeah, okay.
But this person was 14 at the time. Tonya Harding was 8 years old. It would have been 22. Nancy was second. Tonya was third in the senior division.
Yes.
And the winner was Christy Yamaguchi, who went on to win Olympic gold that year. I asked this person, I'm not naming names because I just don't want to, I haven't asked this person's to give their official name on this, so I don't want to put anyone in any position.
That's fine. Bahir.
It's Bahir, yeah. But I asked them what their impression of Tonya Harding was, having been a figure skater at the time and a prominent figure skater at the time. And this is what they wrote. They wrote, after the beating, everyone in the figure skating world thought she was guilty.
Yes.
The true story, if that's what the movie is, was not known. The view also was that she wasn't an elegant skater. Tonya Harding wasn't an elegant skater. And a lot of people looked down on her. She was trashy. She didn't belong in the figure skating world. Nancy was portrayed and thought of as a princess. After seeing the movie, my friend Bahir felt bad for Tonya. Her eyes were opened to it not being Tonya's fault, and she felt she was being unfairly demonized. She also wanted to note that the scene, the opening scene where Tonya skated as a child and the coach approached her, or in this way it happens a little bit reversed.
Sure.
Her mother kind of thrust her upon the coach, was exactly what happened to my friend as a figure skater at the age of 5. She loved the movie. She loved the music. So I thought it was interesting to get a figure skater's perspective.
100%.
Because this film is so much about the divide between truth and this is an interesting thing. It's not the divide between truth and fiction. What I think this movie really plays upon is the divide between truth and what we want to be true.
Okay.
Because
We'll talk about that a little bit.
What I mean here is that Tonya Harding wants the truth to be that she is the best figure skater in the world, and that's all that matters. But that's not the truth of what she experiences. Like the truth, and for example, you and I in movies, we like to believe that good will conquer evil. All that is right in the world will eventually be resolved.
I guess.
And, I think that's kind of like a popular kind of conception about the prism with which we watch movies.
Yep.
And that's the truth that I think Tonya Harding wants in this film. It's the truth that that we are that all her hard work, her dedication will pay off. But when she confronts figure skating judges, they're like, no, we want someone to portray the American, to represent America. They have to be wholesome. You're poor. You're for lack of a better term, white trash.
Yeah.
No matter how good you get, you will not be, we will not allow you to represent us. And she has to fight against that. And I think even her husband, Jeff, wants to believe that this relationship, this young, this marrying dumb relationship is gonna survive. But it's clear to everyone that it's not. And so there's this fiction that both characters are telling as they talk to the camera, which is up against it's not a deception. It's up against what they want to be true. They want
it's lying to yourself whether or not you believe that lie or not.
But the lie is not necessarily coming from themselves. They're not, they misremember things. The film kind of really plays with this idea of truth and fiction, but it's also I think what they're coming up against is what they want to be true. What they believe should be true in the world is not what the world is giving back to them. And Tonya Harding, who's this permanently gifted figure skater, is not being,
the world's not bending to that will as much as she thinks it should because of outside factors.
Yeah, and well, I think it's because the world doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You know, and figure skating is one of those sports, like kind of like polo or something like that, where there's just an economic factor that means only certain people become great at this sport. You know, I don't know if that's true for figure skating today. I don't know if Tonya Harding is like exemplifies that is not true.
It's funny because like if you think about sports that would have like a barrier to entry that is money, right?
Yeah.
Like polo, because you need a horse.
But it's also played by.
I know,
you know, like,
but I'm saying like
common,
that makes sense. But like, and there's a reason why bowling is something whatever. But like figure skating, you just need a pond and some skates. Like I'm curious where. I guess figure skating might have sort of become akin to, and I don't know the history of this. If you know the history of this, please write us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. But like when did skating in that sort of form become sort of a highbrow thing? Was it because it became sort of a dance with like elegance sort of tied into it? Or because, I mean, skating used to be just a pastime that people did. Yeah. And then then obviously sports were like hockey and sort of other things were happening. And then people were starting to do tricks. And then I'm sure it sort of elevated itself. But like, it doesn't seem to me like it should be that much of a gatekept sport. And it never occurred to me, honestly, until, I mean, I didn't give it this much thought beyond when I was a little kid. The Tonya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan story was a big deal, and Nancy was always the good person who was victimized by the bad person. Yeah. Down to the point they talk about this in the film where Tonya Harding became a punchline. First she was abused by people around her, then she was abused by literally everybody in the country, and then she just became a joke. Right. And because if you got hit in the knee, that was Tonya Harding. Like that was literally
Harding did.
When I was a child, that was it. And when you're a kid, you don't know better. You don't know the social. And then I hadn't really thought about the story in years. And then I watched this movie and I was like, of course there's another side to this. Yeah. And it's always so interesting to me when film can take a preconceived notion and not only give you an aspect of it that is the opposite, but turn it on its head enough where you're like, oh yeah, like nothing is black and white. Yeah. And this movie is a perfect example of why we should never consider anything sort of black and white. There's shades of gray all over, and it's I don't know. It was.
I'm gonna guess what the IMDb synopsis is here. I'm gonna go. It's the true life story of Tonya Harding, Olympic figure skater who fell into notoriety for an incident that occurred.
Kind of.
I'm just guessing.
It's not the true life story. Yeah. Competitive ice skater Tonya Harding rises amongst the ranks at the U.S. Figure Skating Championships, but her future in the activity, is thrown into doubt when her ex-husband intervenes.
Right. Yeah. Intervenes.
Well, yeah, hires somebody to misinterpret a thing to then hit somebody with a pipe, a baton.
Matt, what did you think of the movie?
I dug it. I mean, I said that before. I 100% dug the crap out of it. I think something I've really been enjoying lately is Margot Robbie in general. Yeah, I feel like Margot Robbie falls into the Oscar Isaac camp we talked about last time with Annihilation. But every time I see Margot Robbie, it's a different Margot Robbie. Right. And it's so interesting because the first time I saw Margot Robbie was in Wolf of Wall Street. And that's a very specific role and whatnot. And, it didn't give her a chance to do too much range wise. Yeah. And then you see her in other films down to Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. She was kind of a shining star in even that movie to me because she felt like a real human being character. Mm-hmm. Then you look at she's one of the only decent parts in Suicide Squad outside of Will Smith. And then the other Focus, the Will Smith in her movie I loved that movie. Yeah, that was really fun.
We saw that together. Yeah. Held hand in hand.
Yep. And then, and every time I see her, and then when I heard she was doing this, I was like, really? Yeah. And then I saw
it. Seems like a perfect fit for her though.
Yeah, I like chameleon actors. I like actors that amorphosize into the parts they play, and I don't think, oh, that's Margot Robbie. And at this point, other than knowing it in the beginning, I never was taken out of it. Being like Jeff Goldblum is the opposite. I love Jeff Goldblum for Jeff Goldblum. I don't think I've ever seen a Jeff Goldblum performance where I was taken out of the fact that I'm watching Jeff Goldblum. Right. Again, there's two different ways to enjoy a performance. Yeah. So I really dug this. Sebastian Stan as well. I like him a lot. He was different than I'd ever seen him before. So kudos on that. Again, the editing was absolutely nuts. I loved it to death. I loved that it was a Goodfellas-esque sort of. I always use that trope, and it's not quite that with the way the story is told, but like
it's hard not to see a lot of Scorsese influence on this film.
And I really dug the structure of it. And again, this kind of goes back to the editing too. Is that it's based around interviews that they reshot interviews with the actors acting out these interviews, but they're real interviews.
Yeah.
So it structures a story around that, and it jumps back and forth between. You see the story from multiple perspectives a few times on. You're not quite sure exactly 100% if what you're watching is the truth.
Right.
And that I dug a ton. Also, you can't talk about this movie and performances without bringing up the mother played by
my girl Allison Janney.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah. Holy crap, it was great.
Yeah.
I do think that going into it, I had heard her performance was magnificent in it, and so I think I bought into the hype train a little too much. And then when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, it's very good."
Yeah.
But then I don't think I gave it enough sort of clout. And that actually, upon thinking about it, it's just she does an awesome job.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just I think. Oh, and finally, this is a question I really wanted to ask you, Sheer. So I was impressed. Now, granted, I saw this on a small screen, so I don't know how it translates. I was very impressed with the VFX work they did for her skating, and facial mapping and all that stuff to make Margot Robbie look like she's doing this stuff.
Yeah.
I read on a lot of blogs and a lot of people that I normally respect on these sort of matters that they thought it was garbage, that they thought that the effects work was subpar, and it took them out of the experience entirely. Did that affect? I mean, you work in visual design and graphic design and in motion effects all over the place. Do you think? How did you ever thrown out of it? What did you think it was good or bad?
So it comes to a sort of broader question of visual effects here. First off, when I saw it, my initial response was I was very impressed by the visual effects. I thought, okay, this is a really impressive way. Because they're doing things like by actually having the camera in the arena with her skating, kind of handheld following her.
Yep.
And it's like Margot Robbie's not an Olympic figure skater.
She did a bunch of training, but it's not doing the shit that she's doing.
She's not going to do a triple axel. You know what I mean? So what I appreciated about that was. This is what visual effects should do. Visual effects should enable us to make a film like this. Like I know like when people think about visual effects, we think about like just cities being blown up and that sort of thing. And this is a much more subtle kind of work. Like it's motion tracking, face mapping, 3D design on a face. Plus, they're doing all sorts of crowd recreations and lighting design in that arena as well to make it fill out. And I was like, well, this is actually what I'm interested in with visual effects, because it's not supposed to draw attention to itself. Now, I certainly noticed some of the facial mapping. There are points at which the head doesn't quite feel like it's completely attached to the body in a way that's natural. But I was like, that's actually the upper echelon of where the technology is right now. I mean, the only other comparison film I can think of where they did it perhaps a little bit more gracefully, but they didn't have to do as much, was The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, or Black Swan even as well, where they had to do body doubles and that sort of thing. And in both of those, if you look really closely, you will see the seams, but I found, like, as I was watching it, that these were just really skillful and tastefully done executions of the technology, of how you do it, and without it, this film doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So this is a $11 million movie, so it's not a big, huge blockbuster, but it's drawing upon the technology that is being funneled down from big blockbuster movies and using it in subtle ways to tell a story that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to tell at this budget range. So for that, even though. Yeah, I saw some of the seams occasionally, but I have a trained eye for that.
Yeah.
I would venture to guess 90. It's one of those things, like sometimes you will finesse a visual effects for the 1% of people who understand it.
Right.
But like 99% of the people will never, ever notice it.
I was shocked so much, as a tangent, but Henry Cavill's mustache in Justice League, so many people didn't notice it.
Yeah.
And I was like,
and the thing is if you hadn't told me that story, I wouldn't be on the lookout for it. So I wouldn't.
I wasn't
care.
on the lookout for it before. I was like, why does his mouth look like it's not human?
Yeah.
And side note, did you see from a VFX perspective? I'll send you the link, or if anyone knows, send it to us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. There's a link of someone who did the VFX on a $500 computer with a different sort of way and made the removal better than the $1 million they spent. It's insane.
Oh, well, there you go.
Anyway. Okay, that's good. I wanted that perspective of it, because that was a fairly vocal criticism of this film that I'd been hearing, and I was like, I don't see it.
That's the thing, like if you're looking for it, you'll see it.
Sure.
If you're not looking for it, you probably there are a number of visual effects that we don't even know about.
Yeah.
Like I have friends that work in digital retouching, and there's a lot of work that goes into digital retouching that you will never know.
And that's if they did their job.
If they did their job, you'll never know. And it's just one of those things. If you're looking for it, you can complain about it. But if you're not looking for it, you probably won't notice it.
What about you, Shahir? How do you feel overall? First impressions, Tonya Town.
This movie is incredibly impressive. It is a deeply, deeply impressive film. Not just in the way it's made. Director Craig Gillespie just knocks this out the park. I've seen his film Lars and the Real Girl, but I haven't seen $1 Million Arm. He's kind of been working in Hollywood, kind of as I don't know exactly how it works with him, but it seems like a director for hire kind of thing.
He's not someone you follow, but you liked.
But I really did like Lars and the Real Girl. Lars and the Real Girl was a movie.
Ryan Reynolds is in that, right? No, not Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling is in that. Yeah, with a doll.
Yeah.
And it was a movie that was way better than it should have. Than it could have been, than it should have been. Like it felt like it was, felt like it was like a kind of a gag, but it was like so heartfelt and sincere that it really like worked.
Sure.
And I agree with that thing you're saying about Margot Robbie as well. I was like, I think what I like about her at this point is I feel like she's capitalizing on the opportunities being given to her. She's not, like she was in The Big Short as Margot Robbie, sitting in a tub drinking champagne. I was like, she could easily be cast as that kind of person throughout her career from now on.
But she's not.
She's young. She's very attractive, obviously. She could easily be cast in any movie that just, wants that. But she's really pushing herself out here. She produced this film. So I feel like she's really capitalizing on the opportunity to like do good work. Yeah. And this is one of those examples of her doing good work. But okay, so Margot Robbie out of the way. I think Craig Gillespie's execution of this film is outstanding in terms of like, bringing that kind of, it's derivative to say Scorsese touch, but it is the Scorsese touch in terms of the way this film
there's influence, swings
and moves and cuts back and forth and in a way kind of runs as almost a stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
I've just been on a binge recently of
I call it haptic. I don't know if that's a good, but like
the haptic sort of feedback kind of thing.
I don't know. That's just what I do.
Maybe, yeah. I've just been on a binge recently of Goodfellas, Casino, Wolf of Wall Street, thinking about that sort of mode of Scorsese, which has this sort of a slightly punk rock, but also stream of consciousness kind of aesthetic. And this replaces the voiceover in the Goodfellas mode with direct interviews. And I think what's cool about that is the film, again, the script is playing on this idea of truth and fiction and nonfiction, and again, and I think what I really like about it is that it's not just a gimmick. It eventually gets into this idea of the truth of what we want, and the thing that's cool about this for all I think I've labeled this as histrionics before, like the idea of like the flamboyancy of it. For all of the flamboyancy of this film, the things that are most heartbreaking are, close-ups of Tonya. There's this one close-up, which you'll see I think they even used it as a poster, where she's putting on makeup for an Olympic qualifying round. And it's like this really gaudy, she's lit horribly. She looks, haggard. She looks haggard. She looks like a zombie that's been woken up like way too early, like she hasn't quite fully transformed yet. Yep. And she's like putting on this smile because she wants to like again, the truth of what she wants is like very different to where she's at. And the movie, Craig Gillespie and the editors and everyone working on this film just smartly allow that moment to be a moment.
Yeah.
And it tells so much of the story. During our review of the post, we talked a little bit about, and it actually came up in our Call Me By Your Name episode as well, where this idea that I've kind of been thinking about a lot is the totality of the experience.
Okay.
So, and what I mean by that is like with the film like Call Me By Your Name felt like not a lot going on until the end, and then you realize the totality of the experience meant something. In the post, we talked a little bit about how that film was, for me personally, that movie was trying to like pull in sort of many different directions. It was trying to do a story about the Pentagon Papers, trying to do a story about the Washington Post. It was trying to do a story about like the ownership of the Washington Post. So it was trying to do a lot of things, and to me, that movie felt like it was kind of pulling in too many different directions.
I liked it.
What's incredible about this film is pulling in almost as many, if not more, directions, and the tonal shifts that this movie has to go through are so big. Like it essentially, it starts out as this kind of sweet, like reminiscence of like this great time, and then it moves into like this sort of story of domestic abuse, but like does it with this like play of fiction and truth really, really smartly, because it manages to like it manages not to dwell in those moments, even though those are heartbreaking moments. And then it fully almost 180-degree shifts into a Coen Brothers movie about like idiotic crime.
Yeah.
And it manages to sustain that entire tone completely convincingly throughout the entire experience.
And I think the structure that they build it on in the editing, or however the script is scripted, that is the skeleton at which all of those things can attach to and still maintain functionality.
I want to shout out Stephen Rogers, the writer, and I want to shout him out for a very specific reason, which is that he has written one of my wife's favorite films, a movie called P.S. I Love You.
Okay.
Which is a movie that, so my wife, like, generally, she likes, she's a hard scientist, so she works in, like, she's trying to cure cancer,
Is that on her business card?
Yeah, I'm a hard scientist.
Hard scientist.
So her movie choices are often, like, the exact opposite. She doesn't want movies that are, like, hard.
She doesn't want flaccid theories.
Yeah,
she wants hard science.
No, Joe. She wants fluffiness in the movies. She wants movies that that are just like pure enjoyment.
Oh, she wants the opposite of what she does in the day.
Exactly. And like there are certain movies like that. Like the thing is though, the ones that she actually loves are ones that I go, these are actually way better than they should be. And
you can't turn off smart, Shahir.
Yeah, one of the movies that she loves is The Sweetest Thing, which I think is derided as like one of the worst movies ever made. It's got Cameron Diaz in it. But I watch it and I go, this is just as good as like Dumb and Dumber. It's like a female Farrelly Brothers movie, and it's really good. I don't know. A lot of people don't like that movie. The other one is P.S. I Love You, which is written by Stephen Rogers, who wrote I, Tonya. And P.S. I Love You is this like, yeah, it's a schmaltzy kind of like romance film about it's got Gerard Butler and Hilary Swank in it, about a relationship that, where, it's no spoilers, Gerard Butler dies and writes all these letters to his wife for things for her to do. Now that sounds like a kind of, not Lifetime movie, but like a movie of the week kind of romance.
Sure.
But it's really good, and it's really what's good about it is it's really affecting. Like it actually it lands all the notes it's trying to do. So I, like Stephen Rogers is this guy, and he's gone on to do films like Kate and Leopold, Stepmom, Hope Floats. He does this kind of thing. I'm really interested in Hope Floats because Hope Floats kind of is a Sandra Bullock film that again plays really similarly to I, Tonya. And that it's about a woman who, a beauty pageant queen, if I'm remembering correctly, I haven't seen it in a long time, who goes on a Jerry Springer type show and I think is broken up with and has to confront the reality of her life versus the beauty pageant thing. So I think that's kind of similarly etched into I, Tonya, which is this sort of the truth of who she is, the truth of who America thinks she is, and like the reality of what the world is. The couple of questions I had for you where I feel like not the reason you would like this film, but I think that this film plays into the thing that I liked about O.J. Simpson, the People versus O.J. Simpson,
Okay.
but in a much more entertaining way. You know, like it's not 7 hours long for one. It's incredibly entertaining. This film, it's supremely watchable.
Right.
So I was curious about your response to this versus that. The other thing I was curious about, and I was just so this. The second question is actually a two-factor question.
Oh Jesus! Okay, I'm writing this down.
Yeah.
OJ.
Because something you've brought up a lot in movies that we've reviewed are unlikable characters, people who do terrible things, and I think I think you and I have differed slightly on this. For example, I'm thinking about the Florida Project, where you did not like the mother,
Right.
and also The Light Between Oceans, where you felt that these were just terrible people,
Right.
And I was curious your response to this versus your thinking about those films, because these are ostensibly a lot of these people are terrible people. The second factor to that question,
terrible people question.
Terrible people,
Terrible disliking characters.
is another thing that you've brought up repeatedly in our reviews, which is the term Oscar bait. And what is the definition of Oscar bait for you? Because I think we've talked about it a lot, but we've never come to a clear.
We never will.
Yeah. So those are the three things that I was sort of like I was watching with you in mind.
Okay. Well, OJ question. I think. It definitely scratches the same itch in a way if you are interested in the story to begin with. It retells a tale. I, Tonya retells a tale, as does the 7-hour OJ doc, of a story that you might not know all the facts to. And from a fact-finding mission or a true crime, even like sort of, I guess, more of a true crime perspective, those things are 100% validating and make you buy into the experience even more. So I think the same itch is being scratched in both.
Yeah.
But one is very in-depth and almost clinical, and the other one is a bit more stylish in the sense of trying to get you involved. Like if you weren't already interested in it, it wants you to get interested in it. Whereas I feel like, Tonya, I feel like the O.J. Simpson thing is like, if you're going to sit down and watch 7 hours of anything, you're already into it.
Right.
So that's sort of in regards to that. As far as unlikable characters are concerned, or characters that you don't like. So let's look at Florida Project and the mother from Florida Project. I didn't see the way, and this is actually a very good example. So Tonya Harding and the mother from the Florida Project are kind of not different locations, obviously, but sort of similar problems in probably how they were brought up and how their stories might be more akin as far as just from a socioeconomical point of where they're coming from.
Right.
The way, and again, it kind of devolves into what the film is actually about. I think Florida Project is a lot about the innocence sort of being a child and the experiences of childhood throughout, even beyond what joys or traumas you have. So the mother isn't given, and I don't think it's the point of that movie, given enough. I only see the mother being selfish, but then like being loving to the child when it makes sense for her to be, or when even it sort of feels good to be loving to the child in Florida Project. And I don't want to get too much into it, but that's sort of how I saw her. I saw her as a very selfish character. In I, Tonya, because it's such a deep character piece about Tonya Harding, you see far more reasons than you do the mother in Florida Project of why she is the way she is. The story explains through all of the trauma that she went through her entire life, and that's not saying that all of it's not her fault for not doing this, that, or the other thing, but it's far more easy to relate to someone that you have their whole backstory as opposed to a character that just is making all of these decisions where you're just like, oh, this person's awful.
Right.
Like, and and 100%, if the Florida Project 2 comes out and it's the discussion of all of how Haley, I think it was, or I don't remember the character's name, became how she was, maybe I would have a differing opinion. But I think if you're going to try to make a sympathetic, awful character, you need to do that groundwork. And Tonya is entirely, for the first act and a half, all that groundwork. The stuff with her mother, the abusive relationship of her, of Sebastian Stain, of her husband, then ex-husband, the leaving of her father, or Tanya's father leaving, being one of the only positive people in her life to just abandon her, basically. And then you get her in the sport that she just happens to be excellent at, works really hard at, and then those people who are in charge of that sport treat her like garbage too. And it's like, then all this perfect soup of just being abused, for lack of a better term, your entire life, then is exacerbated by the fact that people around you, due to all their issues, are stupid and are not actually able to to discern fact from fiction, and causing a already like horrible situation with horrible people to be exacerbated to nightmarish national levels. So I think as far as that's concerned, that's my answer to the character thing. And as far as Oscar bait, question number 3, I would say this film, I didn't even think about it in terms of Oscar bait. It's too almost how do I put it, rough and tumble, or too.
So if this was the Nancy Kerrigan story, would you think it was Oscar bait?
It depends on how it was done. Right. There's nothing in this film that makes me think like, oh, they're shooting like every film wants to be recognized, of course, if they're trying to make a good film, but like. Oscar bait is, and this is one of the definitions I can think of off the top of my head, is things in a film, if enough tropes that the Oscars tend to gravitate towards are in a film, either in its production style or its story of production or the topics or the characters, then that sort of an Oscar baity film. This has a few, I would say, trying to like, it's a real life story of a sports icon, I'll say.
It's also a leading lady or a leading actress transforming themselves to
sure that trope of production. But then beyond that, I don't quite know what else is Oscar baity about. Like normally, if I there's no such thing as a hard rule for this made up term I've done, but like
it's actually not a made up term. There have been a couple of studies about it.
Okay, like I would say 3 or more. Like if I want to go rules of 3, I guess I don't know, but like that's
I asked the question because it felt like again, I don't think this is an Oscar baity movie, but I feel like that term has been used sort of quite a little bit.
It's lazily used. I try to not use it lazily. Whenever I call a movie Oscar bait, I tend to have, whether people agree with me or not, I have a very distinct list of reasons why I think that is.
Right.
It's and I haven't even before this conversation considered this film like that. Yes, looking at it, I could point at a couple things, but as a whole, as a project, I never got that.
The reason I bring that term up is because I think the term the problem is with the term Oscar bait is it gets used as a shorthand for when you don't like something. And I think if you didn't like this movie, for example, if you didn't like this movie, you would call it, you could just, use that term Oscar bait because it's like.
Well, hold on. Okay, so let's look at some of the Oscar nominees this year. Okay. I think Call Me By Your Name could be considered an Oscar baity film, but I liked it a lot.
Right.
I think I use it as an extra spice for. I bring it up more with films that I don't like because
that's what I mean. Is that we're not using it in a way that is analytical. It's a shorthand for things. It's like it's basically
shorthand.
It's shorthand for
shorthand for for calling out.
Because I think if we do the
things
film,
not done as well as I would have liked them to be done.
Because I think the one movie we haven't reviewed in the Best Picture run is The Darkest Hour.
Right.
And
we're gonna try.
And I think that term will come up there. And that term has come up a lot with The Post. Which is a film you liked.
Yeah. Post honestly is probably the most Oscar baity film this year.
Right. But you like that film.
But I like that film.
So that's the thing about that phrase.
I definitely see where you're coming from with this 100%. I know I use that sort of I've used it in the past to negatively describe things. And I think it's because, you know what it is? It's finding the value in a film for me personally.
Yeah.
And when I don't find that value, but I see all the boxes being checked, I'm like, well, since they didn't do that effectively enough for me, and again, this is a very egocentric sort of outlook on a film, then I'm like, it's Oscar baiting, because they're just they're not trying hard enough. That's an awful thing to say, but they didn't grip me in these aspects of what they were trying to do that then makes it be like, well, they just wanted to do all these things. I don't know. So it's a personal reaction.
The reason, and I think my personal reaction to that is that the reason why I don't like the phrase, for example, is that I feel like it dismisses the work of the people involved for wanting to make a good movie. It's like, like
I think it calls out, it's for me personally, it's calling out having ideas of what a good movie is and not delivering on them.
Right. But that's entirely subjective. Like,
it is,
and that's the
subjective.
point. Is like, if they did deliver on them, then you don't use the phrase. If they don't deliver on them, they use the phrase.
I use it as a term of calling out normally things that don't. But if you want to look at it from a purely like checkboxy, is the point doing the thing well or checking the box?
Right.
And that I think is what I would narrow.
And I guess my thing is that I feel like it derides the people involved, like. Because it suggests like, oh, I'm just doing this because I want this.
Sure.
And it derides the work that people...
But when the work, whatever that work is not speaking to me or an audience or whatever, I think that's why it comes up, because it doesn't come out as a meaningful addition to a thing that's being created for me or the person that's experiencing it, calling it Oscar bait. It just comes off as, okay, I mean, I guess this is a musical starring two of the most popular actors.
I think the phrase, the sort of the phrase behind the phrase that might be... more useful is insincere, whether the film feels insincere about its intentions.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I agree with that.
Coming back to the thing about the unlikable...
but about the movies.
Coming back to the thing about the unlikable character, the things that I was kind of thinking about a lot was actually Tonya Harding's mother and Jeff Gillespie, Sebastian Stan. And in the way that those two characters were supremely... yes, they fit into that mold of unlikable, but they're also what I think this movie does really, really well. That I thought was very deeply impressive, amongst other things, was that it gave those characters a real heartbeat to them, and it gave those characters a real sense of like. Yes, they're doing terrible things. They do put Tonya into a terrible position, but they just want things. They want things to be a certain way, and that's just not the way the world works.
And for good or ill, they're trying and doing different things to try to move it in that direction, and it doesn't always work.
And they're supremely damaged people, and that's what that thing about unlikable characters. I think if a movie does work well, it doesn't, We've got into this mode of commercial filmmaking, and it happens all the time. And I hope that this doesn't sound as pontifying or anything like that. But we think that likable characters are what audiences want. I really don't believe that.
I think it's interesting characters.
I think a character can be
relatable character. The best is when you can have a character that's not likable, but you can still relate to.
I don't know if relatable is actually a necessary quantifier for me. Because,
I can relate. Well, maybe relatable is the wrong term or what I'm trying to say. Understandable.
Yeah, understandable. I think is a better term, because relatable means like, oh, if I don't understand the inner workings of a Swahili tribe, then I don't relate to it. And I think that gets into like this really odd thing.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Not necessarily having walked in that person's footwear, but being able to either through empathy or through just what you're told, be able to sort of see their perspective and why they see a thing the way they see it.
Which is, and what I loved in this film was this notion that Allison Janney's character, Tanya's mother, is this single waitress mom who's basically working her whole, she is, she's terrible to be around. She hits her kid. She's not emotionally supportive. She's not empathetic to her daughter's
She's mentally and physically abusive.
Yeah. But we understand, like, she has this amazing speech in the middle of it where she says something along the lines of, I gave you a gift knowing that you would hate me for it. That's a real sacrifice that a mother makes. Now, the thing is, this movie is so smart that it that doesn't play as a sincere moment. We don't go, oh, this is who this character is. But what this movie does is go, oh, this is what this character believes.
I'm going to take it one step further. I don't think it's what the character believes. I think it's and a lot of characters do this in this movie. It's the story the character is telling themselves to justify their own selfish actions.
What they believe.
No. So, because I think deep down, and I think you see it in the performances from all the different characters this happens in this movie, which is again why I think the character pieces are so wonderful. I'll say this to simplify it. It's what they want to believe is true. I don't
fiction versus the truth they want.
I honestly don't think the mother. I think the mother in moments of odd lucidity, clarity, comes at them and be like, "Oh my God, well, why am I so fucking awful to my dad? It's because she would never have been so great if I wasn't like this."
Right.
Like
but that's a scene where she's being confronted with that question.
But that's her lying. That's her lying to herself and buying into the lie.
Yeah, and I think the other one. There's this heartbreaking moment. It's a strange
spoilers.
Yeah, you realize these characters, they just come. They come from a world that I don't understand, but it's also a really abusive world from everyone.
Well, let's talk. Oh, sorry.
And the thing that I was going to talk about was there's this moment towards the end where Tonya leaves Jeff a number of times, but the last time she leaves is when she's really on the precipice of joining the Olympic team for the second time around, and the Tonya the Nancy Kerrigan attack has happened, and the questions being asked is how much did Tonya know? How much did how much was she participating in all of this? And she really decides, I just need to make a break from Jeff at this point for the better. And there's this sort of amazing scene where she's like locked the door, she's about to climb out the window, and Jeff. What I love about Sebastian Stan's performance, your boy Bucky,
Bucks.
What I love about his performance here, and it's something that I haven't seen in Winter Soldier or anything like that.
James Buchanan Barnes
is this domestic abuse, this sort of vile domestic abuse, coupled with this complete, not hidden insecurity. It's like it's on the surface of him. He is like a soft-spoken, insecure man who, he says, I believe that the sun rose and set around Tonya. He loves her deeply. And she says at this line, I just thought this was like tragic, heartbreaking and beautiful. He asks her, what do you think we should do? What do you think I should do? And she says, I don't know, Jeff. I really think you should probably just kill yourself. And it's just devastating. It is this complete moment of destruction for this person. When he realizes she has no love left for him at all. She has nothing left for him. He's been able to talk his way back into this relationship. He's been able to manipulate his way back in, but there's just nothing left here for him. And what I love about this movie is it's able to create that moment in this terrible human being, in this person who does these terrible things. And he even says it at the end, I ruined her career.
Yeah.
It's a testament to how good and smart this movie is.
Yes. Let's circle back a little bit to the themes of abuse and trauma too, because that's something, I feel like we've been heaping praise upon this thing. Let's talk about something that could be considered problematic.
Yeah.
It basically, I kind of want to turn it into I wrote it down in my notes, the phrase, the comedy of trauma. A lot of the laughs that we're getting here in the film are sort of portrayals or married right next to moments of real pain. Yeah. Like there's some narration in the way it's cut together is made to play a little bit lightly or more humorously, but like we'll go from a line or a quippy thing or a one, something that is sort of like, ha ha. And then we see Tanya's face get smashed into a mirror. Yeah. I think that many films do this, and it is problematic. In fact, some things, even you could say some of the things is not necessarily abuse, but just sort of social connotations with some of the jokes and humor in Three Billboards. Yeah. We talked about that.
Yeah.
Here, I think...
Or even directly domestic abuse in that film.
But here, I think it actually plays into the theme of how America treated this story at the time it was happening. Yeah. Because it did just become a joke. And that's echoed in the acts of violence that are put towards Tonya and sometimes even to Jeff, but Jeff is obviously the abuse, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just these acts of violence people are doing onto each other that sometimes is played for a laugh.
Yeah, I actually I have a reading of that, but I actually like your reading a little bit better, which is the idea that this is a reflection of the way America treats us. I think it's a bit of a broader reading, but it plays nicely to exactly what the final. In fact, she has a line. Tonya has a line which is like. America wants someone to love, but then they want someone to hate. And it was like she says this thing. She says, they loved me for a minute, but then they hated me again. And it was like this, but then I was abused again, but this time it was by everyone.
Yeah, by all of you.
By all of you. And she's talking directly to the camera. Which, it's such a fine line to do that kind of breaking the fourth wall, talking to the camera thing where it could go wrong so easily.
But isn't that in one of the interviews too? So she's actually just talking to the interviewee, but addressing America.
Exactly.
So not necessarily the audience, but the audience.
No, and I just mean like breaking the fourth wall is one of those things that can be obnoxious. Like the film I think about that breaks the fourth wall badly is a film like Swordfish. Which at the beginning of it he talks about how bad movies are, and then they proceed to make a bad movie. Yeah. It's one of those things.
I haven't seen Swordfish in ages.
It's not necessarily breaking the fourth wall, but it's like it's very hard to do very, very well, and this movie does it very, very well because thematically you made the point that it's about America's abuse of Tonya Harding. My thing was thematically the reason why the domestic abuse scenes. And this is the wrong phrasing, work, is that they're framed entirely.
They're effective.
Well, they're framed by this notion of truth and fiction. And like throughout those scenes, it basically allows us to underplay, the thing that I like is that it allows us not to dwell in the abuse of those scenes because the characters will stop and address the audience in the middle. And both characters do, she'll say this never happened, and he beat the shit out of me, and then he'll directly address the audience when something is reflecting on him, and so you get this it layers the abuse with this truthing.
It's not even an unreliable narrator.
No.
It's dual completely reliable narrators in the sense that when they say those things, this didn't happen.
They believe
that didn't happen. Yeah. But the truth is probably somewhere in the middle.
It's somewhere in the middle, and it's somewhere weird. I think we can safely assume that Tonya Harding was a victim of domestic abuse, and that if we look inductively at the crime itself, this is a group of people that thought that a physical attack on Nancy Kerrigan was an effective method for gaming the Olympics. So it's like you're in this world where that's okay, violence is okay,
and you think it's gonna work out.
Yeah, you think it's gonna actually play out like that. So I think it works because of the layering of violence, and then the movie has this kind of snappy style to it that the danger of this, and I think it's the films that I remember us talking about this exact topic are both Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, and Quentin Tarantino's film The Hateful Eight, starring Jennifer Jason Leigh. And the thing that I sort of called out about The Hateful Eight, and I haven't rewatched that film, but
I'd like to.
I'd kind of like to rewatch that film. Is the notion that I felt like the abuse that it was heaped upon Jennifer Jason Leigh was used as a punchline, and not as a character moment. She would just get punched, and that was the end of the line, And I felt like the movie kind of just was uneasy in that respect, especially for someone like Quentin Tarantino, who's so good at giving characters motivations. And in Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, there would literally be a character jumping in the moment of domestic abuse to issue to say a joke, and it was kind of problematic. I think this film is less problematic. And we talked about this last week in our review of Annihilation, when we talked about do movies need to fit within the cultural context in which they exist? And I think this is an example of a film where the cultural context that we live in now suggests that portrayals of domestic abuse shouldn't be comedic. And it's kind of the only part is I didn't find them comedic. I found them interesting in what the film was trying to say. And again, the overall thesis here is that the film is coming up with this notion of the line between truth and what we want to be true.
Yeah.
And I think that they were playing there. I didn't watch this with an audience. I can't imagine people laughing during those scenes. I can imagine people feeling uncomfortable about the way the film was making them feel.
I'm trying to think specifically because I did admittedly watch this film a bit ago, but I remember seeing it and laughing or chuckling at a situation and then instantly being like, wait, what?
Yeah. It's amazing how the film like and again, it comes back to Sebastian Stan's performance and the way that they play that character is that he is sweet and loving and kind of caring and doting and suddenly turns on a dime. And you know, like you see that he's just got this like limit for which he cannot cope beyond and then turns to violence.
Right.
And so it's really I think it's an example of skillfully done. And it's like, and again, I hate it that Steve, I hate it that you wrote us in because it feels like we're being sycophantic to your email, but it is genuinely great stuff in this movie. And it's like, you know, like it's really well done. The one thing I was also curious about, that a question that I wanted to raise, is the use of music in this film. It has that kind of, again, Scorsese influenced like use of pop culture that accentuates a moment. But I think, you know, when we've been talking about music, particularly pop music being used in films, and I think we talked about this in Guardians of the Galaxy, we talked about this in The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, and in this film, the thing that I thought was interesting is, again, you can see the Goodfellas comparison because the music that's being used is from that period. Yeah. But it's not the period of the film. And it's all music that's been used in other films really effectively. Like the Supertramp song, Goodbye Stranger, is used amazingly in Magnolia. This year, Fleetwood Mac's The Chain is used in Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's in this film. But the kind of hermetic seal of this film like makes that all work. Like I don't feel like it's like in Suicide Squad when we were like kind of going, oh,
it's a series of music videos.
It's a series, you know, someone's just picked out a playlist. Whereas I think this is actually This is actually a case where someone's picked out a playlist of like easily licensable music. Maybe Steve can speak to like, you know, the thinking about the music in this
write
film.
us in, Steve. Let us know.
But it all kind of lands really effectively because the music is intrinsically tied to the style of the film, and it kind of not only echoes the Goodfellas vibe, but it also echoes the rhythm of the film. Even though it's not of the period, like they should be listening to New Kids on the Block.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
I will say, the music I liked it, but I never particularly, and for this film, thought about the music that much.
Right. I was all up on the music on this film.
I think it helped get you from point A to point B certain places, or even not you, I'm just saying the audience, me. But I never honestly, I was more enthralled with the story being told, and this was just sort of like the frosting, but it was on a frosting on a really good cake. Like I always go back to food analogies, but if you're frosting something, 9 times out of 10, that is probably, you know, or at least cheap things or whatever, like the flavors in the frosting, not the cake is a delivery system for the frosting.
Yeah.
And
it could be a delivery system for cake.
But that's my point. But like a lot of times it's not. Even look at like a cheap donut or something like that. Like the glaze is what you get, like what the taste is, but the donut itself might not be great.
I don't agree with your analogy, but I know what you're trying to say.
Okay. So I just didn't, and again, this isn't a slight to the music, but I didn't gravitate towards it, or I can't remember any particular scenes where I was like, oh, this is perfect. Like I just think
even the use of Fleetwood Mac's The Chain, which was so specific to a film that you saw this year.
I think I don't know. I think it was more specific for me in that particular film. I get it. They both contextually, based on what the song is about, make 100% sense. But I think this movie, weirdly enough, felt more loaded to me, and maybe it's what watered it down for me from a musical perspective, more loaded than Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy had a ton of music on its soundtrack, but it used specific songs for very specific moments, where this one I think used a couple specific songs for very specific moments, but then just sort of had other songs kind of going through as the background, and maybe that's why that wasn't an aspect of this that pulled me like it did in Guardians.
Right.
And maybe I'm trying to think of, because us having this conversation is literally the first time I've thought about the music.
The other one was Dire Straits' Romeo and Juliet. It at the beginning when they're kind of like falling in love, which is a song that's used in Empire Records. For
Side
example.
note, all right, Steve, I got something else I don't like about this movie.
Okay.
every compliment or criticism will be directed at you, Steve.
Yeah, Steve, you're
our one cipher into this world.
His rebuttal should be the email subject should be I, Steve.
I, Steve should, yes. I, Steve is the sequel we need. No, the thing about when it was the young moment when young Tonya and young Jeff are meeting, and it's literally still Sebastian and Margot, and I'm like, that threw me out. And luckily it was in the beginning and it was fine, but I was like, this is silly.
It is, yeah, no,
like
I know.
They should have cast younger actors just to be that part. And I can see that totally blowing up in their face, too.
Yeah,
Maybe they tried it and it sucked.
Yeah, it's one of those things like the VFX conversation where it's like, it's like, 99% of us.
She's supposed to be like 14 or 15 or something. And I'm like, this is Margot fucking Robbie.
Yeah, but the thing I always forget about Margot Robbie as well, she's only like 25 years old.
No, I know.
You know what I mean? Like
she has a adult woman look to her.
Yeah. And Sebastian Stan doesn't look like a gangly 14, 15. Oh no, he was meant to be older though.
Yeah, he was meant to be a little older.
I think, and
it would have been creepy to have him and a younger, not Margot. Okay, I see the problems. It just threw me out in the moment.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think, they do what they can to make it work with making her makeup kind of pimply, giving her braces, that kind of thing. I can totally see where it doesn't land. But the thing is, again, that the thing I've been talking about for a few weeks is the totality of experience. And the totality of the experience here is so good. And it's so to say that it's derivative of Goodfellas ignores the fact that it has a clear, succinct idea. This film has got something very clear on its mind. And the thing that it's clear on its mind is the divide between fictions, which is a very sort of like amorphous, fluid kind of subject. It's like, this is
also a major point in our political systems currently these days.
Fake news. And I think, it all work, all that style, all that delivery, all that panache, all that flamboyance, all that histrionics, it all works. It all makes the experience rich and powerful and palatable. It's kind of incredible, like when it works, like when it all comes together this well. That's kind of just a rare and beautiful thing. And it's we're wrapping into my final thoughts right now, but it's a story that, again, I kind of like knew adjacent, I kind of...
Well, because we didn't even bring this up in the beginning. You didn't have really any history outside of just sort of hearing about this thing going on at the Olympics, right?
Yeah. And we all, like New Zealand, we all heard about it.
But it wasn't a huge...
No, it was a big story, but I was a little kid, like I was like, not
there were kids...
I was more interested. I knew the O.J. Simpson story much better.
Gotcha. There were kids on the playground with me growing up that like were reenacting or playing this.
Right.
And that's insane to me.
And the image I have in my head is Tonya, like when she says some people think that this is what actually happened, that she was the one that, like beat her up after a game, after a skate. And like the image that she has in her, that was probably, I'd never thought about it, but I'm sure as a little kid, that's what I thought.
Exactly. I thought Tonya Harding hit Nancy Kerrigan with a club to the knee.
Yeah, exactly.
Like walking down a hall or something.
I didn't know about the boyfriend or anything.
Or the boyfriend's friend, played by Paul Walter Hauser, Sean.
We've gone this far without talking about him.
So I thought when I first watched him, like, this is way too caricature-y. And then when you see them next to each other during the end credits, you see all the interviews or whatever, he plays him perfectly. And I've known one or two gentlemen, I was about to say people, but it's always men.
Yeah.
Like this. That are just these like people that have watched one too many movies or think they're these sort of tactical or paramilitary people because they own weapons.
Yeah.
That are just it's such I know that person exists because I've grown up with them.
It's a Coen Brothers type character, and you would never believe it to be true. But he's
and then the two idiots he hires.
Yeah.
And just how a thing. Now, I know we're getting final thoughts here, but do you think that Tonya Harding based on this film or anything you know about it, etc. Do you think that she ever knew about the actual plot to physically hurt Nancy Kerrigan?
So the thing that's interesting is, I think if you just watch this film, you'll walk away with the impression that she didn't know anything. If you think about it, you could easily come to the conclusion that she knew everything.
She asked for the schedule.
Yeah. You know, like that she was being naive. You know, the movie is kind of softening her role in this. You know, like a lot of people, I remember when she appeared at the Golden Globes, Tonya Harding was sitting at the table. A lot of people were asking the question, was like, wait a minute, this woman was directly responsible for, you know, the battering of another competitor in an Olympic sport. You know,
but was she directly responsible?
And what I think that's great about this film is, again, it's couched in that framework of truth versus the truth we want to believe and the truth of the world as we see it. And
so,
you know,
what do you think?
What do I think? Yeah. I think what I think is irrelevant.
I think it is too. I'm just curious what you think. Curiosity is never irrelevant.
I think I'm just going to go with what the film gives me because the film does such a good job of it.
So do you think that she only thought that the letters then, they were going to send threatening letters to her and then that was going to be the extent of it? Because
here's the thing. I don't, if I sat and thought about it, I don't truly believe that, but I'm going to just go with what the film gave me because I'm just going to take it as an experience.
Well, the film gave us a couple different things because like, and again, it leans heavily on Tonya as victim.
Yeah.
But there's moments in it, and especially in the sort of discussion of sort of how things go down from a criminal perspective. They have the list of things written in her handwriting asking what Nancy's schedule is.
Yeah.
So you can look at that and be like that. So now one of two things, they never give a full answer. And I really appreciate this. One, it could just be so that she knows when she's there so she can get a letter delivered to her.
Yeah.
Two, it could be because they were planning on cracking her in the knee.
And if the film didn't like present this like, you know, again, that the domestic abuse scenes where she says this didn't happen like this, but we see it. And then, you know, like where he says this didn't happen like this and she knew it. If the film didn't do those things, you know, and just was like, absolutely, Tonya was, you know, completely absolved of any wrongdoing in this, then that would be more problematic. But because the film is like, plays in that world, it kind of makes it make sense.
I honestly don't think she ever thought that it would go to this place. I think, or if she did think it, it was never something that was actively said to her. If she thought like, oh, maybe it would happen. Oh no, it'll never happen.
Yeah.
But that kind of like itch in your mind. But if it did,
I was curious by Jiff in this. Jiff didn't seem to know what was going to happen. Like he seemed to be thinking that they were just going to
send threatening letters.
And it got a little bit like
I honestly
murky around.
Feel like if it's sort of done in the way, if they're mirroring styles of the interviews and etc. Sean, the character Sean, is really the person that is they're all at fault because they were planning on fucking with the Olympics.
Yeah.
But for as far as the violence is concerned, that's all Sean and his ineptitude.
It's amazing. There's that scene where he goes, "Who do you think sent the threatening letters to Tonya?" And I was like, "Oh my god!" It's like, you know, the chair turns around and he's stroking a cat kind of moment. Yeah. And I was like, "Wait, is this idiot actually brilliant?" And I was like, but then, you know, like you see those amazing scenes where he's like, "I didn't tell anyone," and then he's telling everybody. Yeah. And it's like, again, the transformation that this film does. You know, like no film, very few filmmakers, and again, I got to give it to Craig Gillespie here, can go from Goodfellas to Fargo in one movie and do it so brilliantly.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a magnificent thing. I think, you know, like the thing that I thought was, and this is a metatextual thing and a thing that doesn't exist in the film, but I thought was just interesting to watch, is like knowing that a known domestic abuser with a battered wife and a gun can still be let off, can still get away from a traffic stop without being shot or arrested. You know, like I was just like, I just love it. Like that's that thing about like, you know, do films need to live in the context with which we live in? And it's not. And it's just like, it's kind of amazing to watch that scene, you know, like, you know, a guy goes around firing a gun and like gets away in a traffic stop and just talks his way out of it. I was like, well, we don't live in the same world.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, I think as far as my final thought is concerned, is I really enjoyed this film. Even just talking about it and having this discussion with you, Shira, like I want to go watch it like right now. I want to go watch it again, and that doesn't often like normally talking about a film for these even films I really enjoy. It's sort of the catharsis moment and the completion of my journey with it. Other than like occasionally revisiting it for different reasons, and this is like no, like I'm not only excited to watch it again from an enjoyment standpoint, but I'm excited again to watch it for all of the sort of the breakdown and points that we had sort of made throughout this entire review.
In the spirit of truth and fiction, just so that it doesn't seem like we're just giving this a nice review because the assistant editor emailed us.
Sure.
Can we just shit on the film for like 10 minutes?
Well, we already did.
No, let's just do some false shitting. Let's just like, God, I hated this movie. God, it was garbage. It was like, dude, Tonya. Like, what kind of name is that? It's Tonya. My name is. You know, like that's just
you're gonna grammar Nazi them.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that that the performances were overdone.
Yeah, costuming was terrible.
Costuming was terrible.
It looked like Tonya sewed it on herself.
Oh
my God!
And actually, she never. I read a review or an interview with Tonya Harding saying she never made a coat out of rabbit fur; that she bought it.
That parrot was total CGI.
Parrot was CGI
garbage.
The people playing the press, I didn't believe.
Yeah. I didn't think those cameras were actually filming,
Nope.
You know, like at the time.
Anyway, this is probably getting really boring for everybody. The movie's great. See the movie. It did. It got snubbed on the editing train for the Oscars.
Yeah.
And I hope that it wins some of the other categories that it's up for.
Yeah. Steve, we did this.
We did it for you, Steve. No, it was on our list beyond that, but it just was. It's helpful that we know one person is listening that is involved with the production, and please pass on our praise and respect and just seriously love of the film to the team members if you ever speak to them again. This one the only obscure podcast about movies really dug it.
Yeah.
So this has been the only podcast about the film I, Tonya. Shakir, when you're not renaming yourself and inventing a false friend that perhaps might have been a figure skating champion in their youth, where can folks find you?
You can find me at bahirdow.com. No, my email address is I'm not giving that
Give
shit
the email address.
Well, even though it's on my website.
Where can people find you?
You can go to my website, shahirdaud.com. That's shahirdaud.com. Matthew Kroll, when you are not navigating the line between truth and fiction with a faulty gear shift lever in your car that is turning both left and right at the same time, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me with full control of my RC vehicle at MatthewKroll.com. That's MatthewKroll.com for my life and works. You can also find me at Skeletor, the number 4, PREZ on Instagram, and Emperor MSK on Twitter. Please write us in, onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. Steve, you can write us back, but everybody else, what did you think of I, Tonya? I feel like we've been talking to Steve too much, and now we need to talk to everybody else.
I know. So he's that one kid who keeps putting his hand up in class.
No, we're literally have a string and we're putting his hand up. He's not doing this.
Wait,
this
is he a dead person in this story?
No, but we're literally, he can't.
Are we weekend at Bernie?
We're not weekend at, well, I don't know. That's up to decide. But you can write us in there or Only Movie Pod on Twitter. Also, iTunes reviews, they really help out. Please leave your reviews of us. That's something that I think we need to really buy into. We literally come on.
We left a review for you, Steve. So what are you going to do for us, buddy?
No, I wasn't meaning that. I was meaning we are two people that literally constantly review other people's works. And I am always shocked that more people don't review us for good or bad. I'd prefer it to be good, but leave some iTunes reviews on there. That really does help us out. And until next time, I guess we'll
see you on ice.
What?
We'll see you on the ice.
Okay. All right. See you later, figure skater. Oh!
Well, that was bad.
No, it wasn't. That was worse than yours?
Yeah, that was worse than mine. Mine was bad.
All right. Later.
Bye.